everyone. Happy November. This is the Foreign Astronomical Society meeting. We are at Cranbrook live. We have an audience of about 15 people, some odd here. Pardon me? More than that? All right. So we are having officer elections tonight before the main presentation. Mark Kedzier is acting as our nominating chair and handling the election process. Thank you, Mark. Do we have any first-time attendees tonight? No, everybody's been here before. All righty. We do have one. We do. Hi there. How'd you find out about us? Oh, you are. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, let's start roll call. And actually, I'm going to start back there and work forward. So let's start with you. All right. And I'm Bob Trimble here. Oh, there's Dale Team. I'm Bob Trimble, the president. Hi, everyone. All right, so our banquet, which I bought tickets for today, is at the Ukrainian Cultural Center Monday, December 11th, 6 to 11 p.m. John Blum will be a keynote speaker. The price is $35 until the December meeting, which is why I bought my tickets today via PayPal. You can still do that. So going into officer reports, let's talk about the metro parks. We had our last big event out at Stony Creek Metro Park. They had a really nice tent set up, and it really was like a Renfest feel. They were back in a wooded area I didn't even know existed, and they had just a ton of stuff there. I forgot my PC. I get there and set up, and I usually have a presentation on my PC, so I got to stand and wing it the entire time, which actually worked pretty well. So that is the end of the Metro Parks event for this year. Cranbrook asked for our help for the annual eclipse and then canceled it because of the Michigan Nebula. So that is pretty much the end of my president's report. Dale, first vice president. He's going to tell you he wants presentations.
Yes, I do. It's interesting that I'm having a much easier time getting full length, hour-long presentations than I'm getting 10 to 15 minute presentations. Those are a lot easier, right? You can do that. Yeah. So I would especially, I'm happy to have either kind of presentation, but we urgently need the shorter presentation. So if you have an idea for something, you don't have to give it next month. It can be sometime next year that you give it if you need time. But please let me know. Okay, thank you.
There are plenty of space missions to do short updates about. Thank you, Dale. All right. Second VP Observatory, Jeff. How did our open? We didn't have open house yet. Open house is coming. What? No, we had an open house. Oh my God.
We always have an open house. So the open house was on the 28th. The weather was not great. I don't remember promising great weather that time, so it wasn't my fault. Yeah. I was down in Brighton with the spaceship, and then I hauled it up to Stargate. We flew 5 crews out at Stargate, and then everyone pretty much went home. But next month, November, clear, crisp. It's going to be cold and clear. Telling you, one of the 2 clear nights is going to be on our observing number. Don't quote me on the date. I don't remember, but it's the 4th Saturday. Is it? I'm not going to say it till 25th. Okay. 25th of November. In other Stargate news, Mark Kedzier, my main man in the middle there, he replaced what our ladder fits into. It's a little piece of infrastructure. You've probably never noticed it before, but it had rotten away, and he fixed it up for us. So thank you, Mark. He's also got swag. He'll talk about that later. Uh, I think that's it. We have telescopes that I want to offload, but you got to give me a minute to get photos and get them into the WASP. But if you're in the market for a bigger, what do you call it, a fork mount, let me know because I probably have something that you could probably pick up. Or if you want to take it as a loaner, I'd be more than happy to give it to you as a loaner. No, but you can have it for quite some time. Do you want to do the globe now, or do you want to do it as part of your? Okay, good. I'm giving the Macomb talk on the spaceship. So if you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about when I say my spaceship, check out the Macomb meeting. All right, that's all I got.
So our treasurer is now here, the treasurer, which I don't actually know what it is. Secretary Mark Kedzier is coming up here, and he's going to talk to you about minutes. He's going to tell you the minutes for the WASP and talk about swag, which I'm pumped about.
Good evening, everyone. First things, I came up with it's a tentative menu for our banquet at the Ukrainian Cultural Center. It'll be on December 11th. We have 3 entrees, 2 vegetable sides, 2 potato sides, pasta side, a dessert, and you get your fresh salad, house dressing, relish tray, assorted cold salads, rolls and butters, soft drinks, and a cash bar. We're looking at Ukrainian style meatballs and mushroom sauce. Boneless breaded chicken breast with choice of sauce. Southern smothered styles, pork chops with mushrooms and onions. Green beans and almonds. Normandy blend as broccoli, carrots, cauliflower, squash, zucchini, 2 potato sides, some rosemary roasted redskins and seasoned, whipped with gravy, pastacholi, and dessert cheesecake with strawberry topping. Okay, and if that doesn't, so if you're hungry, come to the banquet. Right. Also, regarding the banquet, if anybody has any, we're gonna have door prizes. I have some donations. And if anybody has a nice door prize, Dr. Dale Parton has some binoculars he's donating, 15 by 70s, right? Celestrons. Bring them to the banquet and we'll get those as door prizes. We have our drawing at the end. Right there where I'm sitting, I have our WASP apparel price list. I want to thank Dale Teeny for posting it in the WASP with the prices. I can take orders over there, take care of payment. We can do PayPal. You can also do cash and everything. I do have 5 hats that you can cash and carry tonight, black and blue, different types of logos. And all those shirts up there and sweaters, they're all extra large. If you're an extra large, you like to buy one, you can take one tonight with you. All right, and we can get the orders. You order tonight, I'll have it for you at the December meeting. So we have a pretty good turnaround right there. And I think that will do it.
Thank you, Mark.
Which you just mentioned for the banquet. Oh no, that's why.
Apparently, our banquet menu is the bee's knees. All right. Thank you, Mark. So, Kevin, outreach. I pretty much covered the outreach already. Anything else to add? Anybody do anything? Kevin's coming up here with a giant globe.
And it's an old star level, and I have the stand too. And this anybody have any? Diane asked me to get it a long time ago. Obviously, it's been in my basement.
How can we bring that as a door prize for the banquet?
Really?
Yeah, that works. Yeah, walk away with it now.
But I also want the dimensions of the wood frame and all that.
It's just a word. It's just a globe.
It's just a model.
It's just a globe and it sits on a stand. So I mean, the stand is like 18. I thought it would be a big round.
All right, publications, Dale Teamy.
We also have some badges.
Right.
So the WASP is obviously up and running, and I'm getting a start on the December issue. We've resurrected the name tag program. I went back to the beginning of, or to January and printed up for all new members who signed up since January. So if you're a brand new member, there's very likely a tag for you up here. Otherwise, you need to request one, and I can print one up and have it for the next Cranbrook meeting.
Thank you. All righty. All right, that is pretty much it for the officer report. So I've done a little bit of astronomy in the news, something that I found. The Lucy spacecraft, which is on the way to Jupiter's Trojan asteroid, flew by the asteroid, I'm going to get this wrong, Dinkinesh, on November 1, and it found out that it's a binary asteroid. It has a moon. So that's pretty cool. So you can look up Lucy asteroid and you will find that on the net. The other thing that's really cool, and I've been seeing this a lot recently, old data from Kepler turns up a system with 7 planets. So Kepler 385, 4,600 light years away, 7 planets really close to the parent star, which is a little larger than our sun. So they're all really hot. And the last one that was really cool is if everybody sees the James Webb Space Telescope, if you haven't, search JWST Crab Nebula. It came out last week. It is amazing. And the original Hubble image of the Crab Nebula is about K by 3K. This James Webb Space Telescope image of the crab is 10K by 9K. It comes in at 148 megabytes. It would easily fill that entire wall if you printed it. So it is, and it's my backdrop right now on my computer. It's beautiful. So I can anybody remember here when they found out about the Crab Nebula? I've always known about it, as far as I know. Can you remember when you found out about it?
I always trust them.
Well, no, nobody here can remember. They just always known about it. Well, my granddaughter was sitting behind me as I'm writing a post about this, so I know the exact date my granddaughter saw the Crab Nebula for the first time. That was last Friday, and she said, "Oh wow, that's pretty." Well, so she's right. So David Levy is not here. I'm gonna have to contact him. He hasn't been here in a couple months. Marty. No, well, I don't have any information on the sun other than, again, this thing has been filling up with geomagnetic storm, radio blackout sorts of stuff. I got the spaceweather.com aurora alert, and it's just been going crazy the last couple days. So any observing reports are at? It was full, or it was reported.
Given what you just said about all these solar activity, I just logged another report from Hammertini. And the photospheric activity with sunspots and groups is about silt. Now, seriously, we're looking at a great object that expresses itself in different ways. And the garden variety sunspot moon count is weighing down as of the last few days. And yet you're telling us that there's all sorts of bells of popping going on, right?
I am getting, yeah, my phone is vibrating off my desk. It's crazy.
The moral of the story is you can't just talk about it. And then ours is one of them.
There's spaceweather.com had a report a couple days ago talking about this solar maximum is actually coming faster than they originally thought, and they're expecting it to be a little bit more energetic, and they're expecting it to a maximum next year. So All righty. Oh, Adrian's online. Got any pictures, Adrian? Doing observing
Of
report.
course I do, but seeing as I'm driving, I'll have to share them when
Oh,
I get to Cranbrook. I
all
will
right.
be
Well,
live
you passed
soon.
then.
Yep. In fact, I'm hitting Lone Pine Road right now. But
All
I
right.
did
Well, we'll
take
see you when you
one.
get here.
Yes, I did take one of the moon over the Asable River that I will share when I
That's
am present.
cool.
So,
All
all right.
right.
back-
Well, I don't have anything else here. Do we? Are we ready for the elections?
Well, really quick, I'll give a
What do you
quick
got?
treasurer's report.
Oh
We're
yeah,
holding steady
please.
around $25,000 in the bank. And we are seeing banquet tickets, calendar purchases. And however, as Mark has probably already announced, to buy from him, you will buy directly to get your Warren swag. I'm just going to reiterate that in case he's already stated that. And with that, it's been fun for the last 2 years serving as treasurer. Obviously, life gets in the way. And whomever's elected new treasurer, come see me when I get there, and I'll tell you what I owe you as far as getting all the things together. That's it.
All righty. Thank you. All right. So if we don't have any other observing reports, then Mark, I guess you're up.
There it is. That'll work. Not that same. There we go.
Really should have brought my second screen. I think I'll start doing second screen.
Yeah, I can see the screen, by the way.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Okay, and to advance, just hit the arrow right here. That one right there. Which one I want to do here? Right here.
Where is your presentation? Is it on this computer?
That's it. Well,
No, let's look at my screen right now.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just have you advance the slides, all right? That's very good. Okay. Good evening, everyone. The WASP board has appointed me to be our presiding officer of the 2024 election of our board of directors. And next slide. There we go. The annual election of the Warren Astronomical Society Board of Directors for 2024 is now called to order. Got to have a gavel. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, the bylaws, Article 4, for the Board of Directors. Board of Directors shall consist of 7 officers. Directors shall be elected by a simple majority of members present at this meeting. Section of 403, directors shall be elected at the first regularly scheduled membership meeting in November. And directors elected at this meeting will assume office starting January 1st, 2024. Okay, next slide. Our bylaws, Article. They must be at least 18 years of age. I think we all cover that. Must have been a member in good standing for 1 year. Must maintain his or her membership in good standing during their term of office. Next slide. Okay, tonight's election, some background and some of the procedures will follow. I received as part of as nominating committee chairman, I received names of candidates willing to serve for the offices of president, first vice president, second vice president, and outreach director. At the time the slide was made, the offices of secretary, treasurer, and publications director are term limited, and the nominating committee has not received any nominations for or from persons willing to serve in these positions. Nominations will be sought for each office from the floor of the membership assembly. Nominations need not be seconded. Nominees will be asked if they accept the nomination. One may nominate themselves for any office during the election process. After 3 calls for nominations from the floor, the chairperson will close the nominations for that office. Next slide. Bylaws of Article 5 of the election and term of office. Candidates running for any office uncontested will be elected by acclamation, either a show of hands or thunderous applause. If the office is contested, a secret ballot will take place. The term of any office is for a period of 1 year, with no individual being able to serve more than 3 consecutive terms for the same office. Next slide. The duties and responsibilities of each board office are listed under Article 5, sections 503 through 509. That's our bylaws of the Warren Astronomical Society. You can find that on our website under who we are, and it says here to read our bylaws. So if you need something to read, it's always good to read some bylaws every once in a while. Next slide. Nominations are now open for the office of president. And those are some of the, in quotes, come right from the bylaws, responsibilities of the president. And let you read that while there. The nominating committee has received the name of Bob Tremblay to run for the office of president. If elected, this will be his second consecutive term in the office of president. And to clarify that, Bob, are you the president? Okay, confirmation from Bob that he will run. And at this time, are there any other nominations from the floor for the office of president? Are there any other nominations from the president? And one final time, are there any nominations from the floor for the office of president?
I move the nominations be closed.
Okay, get a motion by
Second.
nominations from the floor for the office of president. Nominations are now closed, and by virtue of this nomination being uncontested, Bob Tremblay is elected president of the Warren Astronomical Society by acclamation. Congratulations, Bob. Next slide. Nominations are now open for the office of first vice president program chair. The nominating committee has received the name of Dale Parton to run for office of first vice president program chair. If elected, this will be his second consecutive term for the office of first vice president program chair. And to confirm, Dale, are you willing to run for the office of first vice president program chair again?
I am.
He am. Okay, so Dale will run again. We have his confirmation on that. Are there any other nominations from the floor for the office of first vice president? Are there any other nominations from the floor for first vice president? And one final time, are there any other nominations from the floor for the office of first vice president?
The nominations be closed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ross. We got a motion from Mr. Ross. If there are other nominations for the office of first vice president, nominations are now closed. Being uncontested, Dale Parton is elected first vice president, program chair of the Warren Astronomical Society by acclamation. Congratulations, Dale. Next slide. Nominations are now open. Second vice president, observatory chair. The nominating committee has received the name of Riyad Mahdi to run for the office of second vice president, observatory chair. If elected, this will be his first term serving in this office. Riyad, are you willing to run observatory chair? Okay, he has declared. To the relief of some. To all. Okay. Are there any other nominations for the office second vice president? Are there any other nominations for second vice president? And one final time, Are there any other nominations from the floor for the office of second vice president? Seeing and hearing none, if there are no other nominations, second vice president, nominations are now closed, and by virtue of this nomination being uncontested, Riyad Mahdi is elected second vice president, observatory chair of the Warren Astronomical Society by acclamation. Congratulations, Riyad. And we'll see you at the observatory. There we go. Nominations, next slide, are now open for the office of secretary. The nominating committee has not received any names of individuals willing to run for the office of secretary. This is our term limited offices. Are there any nominations from the floor for the office of secretary? Are there any nominations from the floor? Secretary. Are there any other nominations? Secretary. If there are no nominations, are closed, and with no nominations, the office of secretary is vacant until one is willing to volunteer or to be appointed to the position. Next slide. Nominations are now open for the office of treasurer. The nominee not received any names of individuals willing to run for the office of treasurer. Are there any nominations from the floor for the office of treasurer? Are there any nominations for treasurer? Dave Baranski, are you willing to run? Very good. We have Dave Baranski. Confirmed. And let's see if anybody else has a ballot here. Are there any other nominations for the office of treasurer? Okay. If there are none, nominations are closed. And by virtue of this nomination being uncontested, Dave Baranski is elected treasurer of the Warren Astronomical Society by acclamation. Congratulations, Dave, and thank you. You had a lot of us sweating there. All right, there we go. Nominations are now outreach director. The nomination committee has received the name of Jeff McLeod to run the office of outreach director. If elected, this will be his first term serving in this office. Jeff, are you willing to run outreach director? Thank you, Jeff. Are there any other nominations for the office of outreach director? Are there any other nominations from the floor for office of outreach director? And one final time, are there any other nominations from the floor for the office of outreach director? So noted, Mr. Ross. If there are no other nominations from the floor for the office director, nominations are now closed. Nomination being uncontested, Jeff McLeod is elected outreach director of the Warren Astronomical Society by acclamation. Congratulations, Jeff. Next slide. Nominations are now the publications director. At the time of this meeting, the nomination committee has not received any names of individuals willing to run the publications director. That was one of our term limits. Are there any nominations for publications director? Are there any other nominations from the floor? The publications director. And one final time, are there any nominations from the floor for the office of the publications director? Still.
Yes, I do.
You will accept Machalia? Yes. Okay, Bachali has accepted the nomination from the floor of publications director. And let's see if we have one final time. Anybody wants to run against Bachalia? Are there any other nominations from the floor for the office of publications director? See. So noted, Mr. Ross. If there are no other nominations from the floor, nominations are now closed. And by virtue of this nomination being uncontested, Vachalia Dandi Bokla, is that how you pronounce your name, sir? I want to make sure it is elected publications director of the Warren Astronomical Society by acclamation. Okay, next slide. What do I got here? Okay, congratulations once again to all of our elected officers for the 2024 WASP Board of Directors. Need a motion to close and adjourn the election? Dale, and who supported? Right there, we'll do Adrian right there, okay? Next slide. The 2024 election of officers of the Warren Astronomical Society is closed and adjourned. And thank you for attending. And next slide. Now back to our regularly scheduled meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
The microphone is not working well enough, or somebody's not close enough to it.
This is not what I was on. You couldn't hear the applause. That's okay.
All right. So if anybody has a change of heart and wishes to take over the role of secretary, contact the board, please. And you can do this anytime by email. Contact us. So see, we are running really quick here. So at this point, we have our snack break, but we are really early. So let's meet at 7:30 now. We 20 minutes. Half hour. All right, so that would be 8 p.m. So come on back in a half hour. Go get yourself a munchie and Dale Parton will say something.
And please, Adrian can take do financial transactions if you want to buy banquet tickets or a calendar. We have the calendars here or something else. This would be a good time.
Can you hear me from there? Can anybody hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to mention to you, you're losing volume. It's going in and out pretty regularly. So somehow the microphone has to be closer to whoever's talking. I guess. Yeah, it's just fading in and out, just
Do you
disappearing.
have plug-in microphone for this? Do you have better microphone? Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank
Can I increase the microphone input volume?
So now, yeah, maybe we can.
Congratulations, everybody running. Very nice job.
Say my sister.
Thank you.
Do this. We can just say my sister. Say my sister.
All right, hey, Ken, I just changed the microphone. Can you hear me? Is it any better?
Change, so that's 35 for the banquet ticket.
Perfect now. Yeah, it sounds
Oh, okay. Yeah, we
Really?
just changed the microphone on Zoom to a different one.
Yeah.
Wish we didn't know about earlier. Thanks
It's
for pointing
nice.
that out.
Nice thing that your wife said about you today, by the way. Bob, your wife's comment
It's
about
really loud here, Ken. I can't hear anything.
yeah, I hear you.
Sorry.
She was great.
I'm gonna mute this, by the way.
Hi, Bob. You're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. How you doing?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, okay's okay.
Oh, not bad, not bad. Had to get Brian from work. He was working late tonight, so couldn't
Where's he
make it.
Where's he working?
It's a credit union. He's been there 4 months now. Has a
You told me.
full-time job.
You told me that.
It's
Yeah.
yeah. He likes the job. He's doing well.
Well, that's great. I can't expect that he wouldn't do well.
No, yeah. His manager of there's 5 branches right around the area here, and his manager told him the other day that if everybody was as hardworking as you are, we'd be able to expand real fast. So that was a nice.
That's great. By the way, I told you I talked to my dentist again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like we got a good one. And it looks like one of the people that's going to join us was a classmate of mine years ago.
Ah, cool.
What's his name? God, should know it like I know my own name.
Yeah. So how's about your twin grandsons? Any?
I have to kind of break that to my daughter's
Yeah. Yeah, she
you know,
needs a little arm twisting, but
needs a little bit.
you don't know how to twist arms, do you?
Never learned how to do that. No,
Never did that. Nope.
never did.
That'd be a neat thing because they're both graduating from high school, right, this year.
Yeah, that's what they're doing this year, and that's
Yeah,
what
that'd be a terrific remembrance of your high school graduation, going on a jet plane ride to look at the solar eclipse.
Right. She's actually they actually are in a class which looks like I'm going to teach as soon as we get a little more settled around here. It's an astrophysics class at West Bloomfield High School. And
I'm on the phone.
It's okay. Go ahead. Answer.
That's right. My wife telling me she went.
Yeah. But anyway,
I'll get a little bit. Yeah. Go ahead.
But I'm going to teach that class, I guess, one time this year. So
very good.
Yeah, it sounds like a great thing to do. So So I think that Bob is talking, but I don't think he knows he's muted or he's not talking to us.
Don't know. Maybe he's talking to us, or maybe he's talking to Dale. Looks like he's talking to Dale.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, that's Gary Ross. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, Gary. Yeah.
Okay.
So how's the wife doing?
Linda's doing much better. She's going in for chemo tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, which is 3 times a week, every 3rd week.
Yep.
And she had a transfusion today to help her with the system. And
yep.
Consequently, she should, it should be I hope it's a good, easy one for her again.
Yeah.
But she goes in for
it can be up and down. Yeah, it can be pretty rough sometimes.
And she's going in for 4 hours tomorrow.
Then
she goes in for 2 hours the other 2 days. So
yeah.
But she's doing way better, and she's taking physical therapy, and she's taking to it really well. So that's great. That's
good.
Okay.
Well, let's keep our hopes up and everything. So
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, and every little hope we'll go for.
Oh yeah. Yep.
All right.
Well, I got to run up to my wife on it before the meeting starts.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it. I'll see you.
Mute it. I'm going to go up and do that.
All right. I'll see you. Don't take that bridge too if you can. The bridge behind you. Looks like the Golden Gate.
I understand, but it's fine. This gentleman says that I'm not permitted to dine here. No, you don't understand. Explain that. It's the main event. I'm sorry. It is the policy of the restaurants. Everything all right? No, it's not all right. This guy's saying Dr. Shirley can't eat here. I don't know to do with that. These are long standing traditions, club rules. I'm sure you understand. No, I do not understand. I'm sorry. Wait, are you telling me the bozos in this band and all these people that came here to see him play, they can eat here? But the star of the show, the parking spot of honor, he can't? I'm afraid not. Well, he's got to eat. I mean, he's got to have dinner. Okay, I'll tell you what. Why don't we bring something to his dressing room? Huh? John Sugar, man, you? No. I'm not eating in that storage room. Okay.
Okay, we've got a 2-minute warning here. 2-minute warning. 1-minute warning.
We'll see that online.
Okay, so I'm all ready to go here. I've got the main presentation up here, presenter view on there. It's just ready to go.
You ready?
Okay, everyone. I understand there some people are having trouble hearing. So I'm trying to raise my voice and speak right into the microphone. I'm talking loud.
Yeah. Here we're gonna play with the mic just a little bit.
Push these papers out.
Right.
I mean, this is one thing.
All right, I have got eluded.
Will contain all the information that is easily stored for 5,000 years. It's all initial images and unreadable.
Check 1, 2.
The woman that read me over that was originally designed. But she found the story and said, oh no, this is gonna be on Zoom. They're no universe. They're just hanging on our meetings.
Gary,
Yes.
let's get going. This is your time. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. I spent a lot of work thinking about what to say. No, that's my napkin from the snack. Here it is. Let me see here. I hope I don't tear it getting it open. Let me see. Let's see. I think this is this way. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. I really worked on this, Gary. So, Gary Ross first attended a society meeting, Detroit Astronomical Society, back in 1958, when I was a child. He first attended a Warren Astronomical Society meeting in 1962, and I believe gave a presentation that year on double stars. He finally got around to joining in 2006. Maybe the fee was a little too high for him. I don't know.
The company is insufficient.
The company was insufficient, he says. He did serve as our president sometime after that. I believe I remember that stint. I try to think how best to describe Gary. One word that kept coming to mind: eclectic. I looked up the definition of that. It means deriving ideas, style, or taste from a broad and diverse range of sources. I have to say, many of those sources can be found in dusty, mildewed sky charts, like he's got on the stage here, or observers' handbooks from the 19th century. Mr. Ross is not generally given to aperture fever, which is a common affliction for amateur astronomers, where you keep having to get a bigger and bigger and bigger telescope so you can see faint, fuzzy things more clearly. Quite the contrary. He has shrunk his aperture from 6 or so inches in days of yore down to 2-inch diameter refractor these days that cannot go to anything if it isn't manually pushed to it. I think it is still a better telescope than what Galileo used. It's sort of one step up from it. Would I say that Gary is technically accomplished? Nay, technical might be a better description. A means not, or even, I dare say, anti-technical. I can imagine him sitting in the class of Aristotle questioning whether epicycles were too complex mathematically to be useful. And then, of course, one of his prime characteristics, modesty. I have to say that upon reflection, I had to take back modesty. It's not a word that comes easily to my lips regarding our speaker. For example, our own Bill Beers once remarked that our speaker is the greatest living observer in Michigan. This became gospel truth to Mr. Ross, and he made sure that we published a notice about that honor in this month's WASP publication. It's there. Now, Gary was going to use some ancient antique equipment for showing his presentation, like transparency and an overhead projector. And when I objected, particularly that might be a problem for our online audience, he drafted the able assistance of Clayton Carey. Clayton reportedly joined the Grand Rapids Amateur Astronomical Association, which Gary is a member of, with no particular interest in astronomy, but to associate with intelligent people, which I'm sure explains his friendship with Mr. Ross. Clayton's computer skills were required to get Gary's presentation on the PowerPoint slides. Thank you, Clayton. So the presentation, which we are about to experience, is Mercury before Mariner 10. Gary.
And of course, thank you very much, Clayton V. Carey, without whom this would have been perhaps even a greater failure than promises to be. But thank you, Clayton, because Clayton worked his tuchus off on this thing and is an excellent researcher once one points him in the right direction. What is this? What? I don't like it when you walk behind me. That's how Wild Bill Hickok got it. In the back. Thank you. As I said to Mike O'Dowd here just a very few minutes ago, that of the terrestrial planets, Mercury is definitely the poor relation. And Clayton and I setting out to even up the score a little bit, even though our story ends in the middle 1970s, because this is only one lecture, and quite frankly, we are not equipped to go into the later science of Mercury. Mercury was obviously known before antiquity and came into Greco-Roman times with, much as did Venus, with two names, because he was mistaken for two wanderers or planets. And what the Oriental astronomers made of such a thing, the diligent observers in Korea and in China, going back thousands of years, we do not know, because it would take a sinologist or certainly a historian of science to know what those diligent, intelligent, and scholarly people did with the two strange inner planets which might have to then also have been two planets. With Venus in the Greco world, in the Greek world, the Hellenistic world, there was Phosphorus and Hesperus. I saw the names of Mercury, but of course failed to write them down. But suffice it to say that Mercury also was viewed as two planets for hundreds of years. Mercury is the winged messenger because he moves so very fast. Reminds me of the song, the governor's song from Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Now you see me, now you don't, and then I'm gone. The politician's song. And he has an 88-day revolution period around the sun. And as we shall soon see, is a challenge to observe. Oh, there the cursor is. Thank you. All right. No, no, no. I see the circle with the arrow. All right. Yeah, right. I'm using the red thing. The red. No. What am I supposed to be pressing? Christ's sake, I thought we were going to be mouse.
It's not red button, it's the left button.
The left button. Oh, yes. I know. It reminds me of the line from Lawrence of Arabia, when one of the Arabian princes or potentates says, "Oh, it is always such with machines." Please. All right, it's the left button.
Let's hit the left button. 2 minutes. No, perfect. Change the viewing from extended to duplicate.
Oh. Next. There. Now, what did you just do?
I just used 2 fingers.
Okay.
Next.
And I make this menu appear by 2 fingers.
2 fingers. We'll do it in.
No, 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 I don't want you standing there.
So, 2 fingers.
Next. All right, there. Do not, ah, Jesus Christ. Okay, we got to go.
Previous.
What did you say, Mike?
Previous.
Yeah. No. You want to tell me technology? We'll talk about the steel plow, the McCormick reaper, and the mason job. So, where were we? All right. So, this diagram is taken from a British textbook and is drawn to latitude 51 degrees, which is that of London. And we can see from the angle of approach or the angle of from the horizon how difficult Mercury is to see from southern England. Now he is better positioned. The lowest is at the worst possible elongation of Mercury, and the highest way up there is the best. We at latitude 42 to 43 degrees are much better situated, but the European observers historically have always been at a disadvantage. And adding to this, we can see that given some sort of telescopic, that Mercury is at his closest when he is showing the least surface. Some observers have preferred to go with a smaller disk and with a fuller disk as a result. But they are sacrificing a lot of detail, and this planet is notably hard to observe. Adrian, is there a way that I can have any kind of light here? Any kind of light? I have a phone too.
So we turn the flashlight on and we aim it down and it should illuminate.
All right.
Thank you.
There's your light. All right. All right, thank you. There are some disagreements as to when the first observation of Mercury was recorded. Most historians will settle on 265 BCE, the first recorded Egyptian observation, but there are indications that observations go back at least 150 years before that, based upon inference. Now, as a planet, its movements were well known before the end of the classical period, which, according to some historians, can be maybe 500 to 700 of the Common Era, AD. It is difficult to observe from mid-latitude and certainly high latitudes, and especially from low elevations because of the atmospheric column. Mercury, unlike the other planets, will twinkle because he has to. So near to the horizon and going through such a considerable light path. When I was a boy, and perhaps the rest of you, beginning in astronomy, that one was taught that the planets don't twinkle, Mercury does. There is the rumor, which will have to be beaten to death with a baseball bat, that Copernicus never saw Mercury. This is balderdash. That it was Patrick Moore who observed Mercury on several occasions, 6 nights running, from the same town in Poland during Moore's visit in 1973. And one author says during Copernicus's extensive travels throughout Europe, it is unlikely he ever saw it. I too find it unlikely he never saw it, because yes, he was a theoretician, but also he was a turn of the 16th century astronomer who would make every effort to observe this elusive planet. But look at the position someone is in at the latitude of London. Looking through the English atmosphere. Okay, here we go. Now how do we make the menu? 2 fingers. There. Thank you. Hevelius, well, in orbital theory. The more complex one is an extremely elaborate version of the Ptolemaic solar system. It is a nightmare. As Alfonso of Castile, I think he was 13th century king of Spain, one of those philosopher kings, said that if the Lord had consulted him, he could have come up with a better system. I often have the same feeling myself about certain things the Lord has done. But around 1500, there was an attempt by Copernicus, and one must note, an astronomer in India, to create a hybrid system whereby the inferior planets, as we now know them, Venus and Mercury, would be separated out from the motions of the other planets so as to make more sense about what Venus and Mercury actually did in the night or twilight skies. Now, one might get a little snotty about this and say that the man in India was influenced by Copernicus, but that is ridiculous because great minds can use different situations, different opportunities, and come up with the same idea. But it was at least an attempt to make some sense, as you see with the more simplified diagram, some sense of what the inferior planets were doing. In early telescopic observations, Hevelius was probably the first to observe the phases of Mercury, but others give the credit to Giovanni Lupus in 1639. Of course, Hevelius is a much better known observer than Zupus. In fact, to be frank, I had never heard of Zupus before doing this research. There was, okay, there, thank you. There was an early bias going back possibly to the 17th century for a 24-hour rotation period for Venus, in other words, the turn upon its axis. One can forgive the astronomers and the theoreticians of the era for thinking that Mercury would have a 24-hour rotation period because we have a 24-hour rotation period, and there's a certain beauty in finding uniformities in nature, a rational system for nature. So the early take on Mercury's rotation period was the same as the Earth's. Schroeder, a Venus observer, observing 1780 to 1815, spent some time on Mercury. Quote, proposed a period of 24 hours for difficult to observe Mercury, a result which, in the absence of any better estimate, stood alone. Quoting the excellent book on planetary science by one Professor Sheehan. But likely, Schroeder was simply leaning on earlier work and found it difficult to contradict. He was, however, a crack observer, so we cannot put it down to any sort of intellectual laziness. The first real map, and the southern crescent was seen to be blunted when Venus was in crescent phase. The first map was due to a mountain that was about 19 kilometers high. That was Schroeder's work in the first third of the 19th century. Quote, some of Schroeder's observations seemed doubtful. So thought another observer of Mercury, the mighty, I'm adding that, Sir William Herschel, whose telescopic studies of Mercury never revealed anything interesting. And we're talking about William Herschel, a man not easily put off or daunted. But even with his excellent telescopes and his diligence at the eyepiece, could not make too much out of Mercury. Beer and Madler made many observations of the Terminator line in 1836, and Lowell's drawings, and we're getting to that very soon. Lowell's drawings of the elongation of 1896 to February 1897, observing the position of the central meridian, Sheehan says, and we have a Lowell product right here, said, the presumption is that the markings were completely illusory by later analysis of Lowell's work. As diligent as he was, and as good a telescope as he had in Arizona at Flagstaff. So we closed the 19th century with the encyclopedist Berry, 1898, who says, various bright and dark areas have been recorded, but different observers give very different accounts of them. The rotation periods are also very uncertain, though a good many astronomers support Signor Schiaparelli's 1882 estimates for Mercury, which says that it rotates in a time equal to its revolution, 88 days, so always turns the same face toward the sun, like Moon and Iapetus. It could easily be explained by the tidal actions of some time in the distant past when the planets were to a great extent fluid. So, Berry, in his encyclopedia, says, in essence, politely, nobody really knows what's going on with Mercury. We see here Lowell's work on the right. Note the linearity of his renderings. The work of the Fournier brothers around in the teens in the 1920s are far less linear, as is Schiaparelli's one of his classic drawings. Lowell seemed to have a bias for linear features. He had excellent eyesight. He had a magnificent large refractor in Arizona. But even at the latitude of Arizona and at the altitude of his Flagstaff Observatory, Mercury still defied good rendition. So we go to next. All right, there. We must not overlook some excellent work not shown in France by René Géry-Delors around 1920. I do not know what Géry-Delors was using for a telescope. Rideau, one of in my judgment, the greatest astro artist. Now, I did not say planetary observer. I said astro artist before Chesley Bonestell made drawings of Mercury. Now, some of Rideau's work can be found in the Larousse Encyclopedia of Astronomy, published in France in 1958. But Rideau was also a field astronomer, in addition to be a nature artist. And this is the result we have from him in the 1920s. And then William Denning in the 1880s with a rather small refractor noted soft, muted renderings of features without detail. What I'm pointing out here is that we have all these dedicated field scientists who, with or without consultation amongst one another, are having a very difficult time getting a hold of this greased pig because of the limitations of instruments. I will not say limitations of eyesight, and even the sites in which they're attempting to do this. The great telescope at Meudon was in Paris. Denning is working in England. Schroeder is working in Germany or Bavaria. And so what can we really expect to have in terms of a work product? Night after night, the weather is going to vary, the atmosphere is going to vary. And this may sound harsh, but that's never stopped me before, is that we are getting a hash. However, Okay, we make the menu come up, right? Okay, now, no. There. These two pictures, come from the 1939 Encyclopedia Britannica. And these two things got into the Britannica because they were the best available images of the day, with which basically the 1930s opened. That Antoniadi wrote the planet Mercury, which was the definitive work. It came out in 1934. And at that point, the issues were pretty much settled of what Mercury looked like, what Mercury was doing, and that was it. And the Britannica gave a fair amount of space to Mercury and published these two pictures. Now, they may have taken these two pictures, the best of the best of the best, of these two great observers, because there seems to be a certain commonality in the appearance. I have to be careful before criticizing the editors of such a great work. The 1939 Encyclopedia Britannica can only be described as massive when I consider the technology and the ability to write big books in the 1930s. They may have been a little bit biased, trying to find something that looked alike from two different telescopes and two observers. I leave it to you to judge whether that was in fact a worthwhile judgment. Here we go. Next. This Mercator projection was by Professor Chapman. Now we are jumping ahead just a bit because he did this work using renderings of Mercury by all kinds of different observers, starting in the 1880s and ending in 1963. Keep in mind that Chapman, I think it was at Harvard, did not have remotely any sort of computer manipulation scanning devices whereby he could take a curved surface and do 5 keystrokes and have that curved surface be flat. He did this by a method that we would have to go to his original paper, and it must have taken forever, which shows that in addition to being an astronomer, he was one fine cartographer. So in the middle 1960s, this was the best that was available from all these visual observations, and I think more than a few attempts at photography. Yes, 1967 is when Sky and Telescope published it. When it went into scholarly journals, I do not know. Okay, yes. Yes. So we go like that, and then we go like that. Fine. Clayton and I call this the final victory, but I would say it's a mistitled slide. I would put Chapman's work at a final victory for a whole planet Mercator projection. But we have the virtuoso Gary Wegner, who did work from 1950 to 62 from the Great Washington out west. His telescope were modest. He used a 10-inch Dahl-Kirkham reflector at 241 or 368 in power. And he did about 100 sketches of Mercury. I know the latitude of the great state of Washington, and he must have compensated for that latitude by being able to work at some considerable elevation in the Cascades. No idea where he lived. But a 10-inch Dalkirkham is not a very big telescope, certainly in circa 1960, but he was an excellent and diligent observer. We've got Spagenberg's map also as the companion. And as I compare these two maps, the map, the one on the right was done in the 1960s and published in a book on planetary astronomy in 1970. When we look at these two maps, Spengenberger and Wegener, I find a certain similarity. Now, keep in mind that Wegener did 100+ drawings of Mercury, and the author of this book, Price, it's a British book, picked that one or two or three. But that's why I have chosen, and Clayton concurred, to call this a final victory for the visual observer of the small telescope. No, we do. No, that's not good. No. The most intelligent man in Boston, quote unquote. He deserves a certain credit here, but we're going to run through the findings of several conferences about the surface composition of Mercury. The first is the Liège Conference of 1962. Two presenters at the conference pointed out that the erosion by meteorite bombardment particularly effective if there was no atmosphere to create the composition of Mercury. And Opik said a small, slowly moving would make the greatest impact on the surface of Mercury, ejecting material, some of it, to escape velocity. AAS conference of 1964 on the composition of the surface. Quote, large radio telescope at Creek Observatory by Welch and Thornton in the microwave, calibrated using Jupiter and Saturn. The average temperature on the face of Mercury is 450 Kelvin, but only a quarter of the disk had been observed. Not to be explained by the temperature of Mercury is not to be explained by radiation belts or an ionosphere. The dark side is warmed by a thin atmosphere supported by recent spectroscopic detection. 1964. So what happened then? Okay, we do this. No, that is wrong. No, we do this. And there. So we do this. What about the atmosphere? Christopher Lowell had some definite views on atmosphere as a result of his observations in the 1890s for 2 calendar years. Actually, no, two oppositions into adjacent years. He said it didn't have any. Now, keeping in mind that Professor Lowell was less critical of an atmosphere of Mars, but he could find no atmosphere. However, an earlier publication supplied by Dr. Parton was the Sunbury, Pennsylvania American, 11 February 1843. It is a curious fact. The planet Mercury, which is nearest to the sun, has an atmosphere more charged with clouds than any other planet of the solar system. This wise provision is obviously intended to screen and shelter that orb from the intense solar light and heat, which might otherwise make existence intolerable there. The newspaper was reporting on a lecture by a professor in Savannah very recently. The professor was presumably an astronomer of sorts. He may also have been something of a theologian at the same time. So dense is the covering of clouds around Mercury that it is quite impossible to obtain more than an occasional glimpse of the disk of it. Well, Lowell said, about 50 years later, permanence of mercurial markings indicates an almost complete lack of atmosphere, no evidence of clouds for daily observations. Like this. Well, there is a great deal of disagreement as time goes on. However, there is unanimous opinion as the 20th century rolls on that if Mercury has an atmosphere, it is extremely tenuous. American Astronomical Society, 1962, has proposed a tenuous atmosphere of heavy inert argon. Professor Field at Princeton has examined many measurements in the polarized light and finds an extremely diffuse gas at best. Studies show nothing, but argon has no lines in the visible spectrum. The high atomic weight of argon is a principal reason why it still may be retained by Mercury. Why has not the argon frozen out on the night side of Mercury, perpetually hidden from sunlight? I'm going to read that again. The night side of Mercury, perpetually hidden from sunlight. Well, the mystery thickens. In 1962, 63, 64, Mercury was assumed to be tidally locked and had been assumed by most observers at that point for 150 to 200 years. In fact, the great Kozyrev, operating at the Crimean Astrophysical Observatory in 1963, was looking for atmosphere, found that the response of the surface of Mercury was the same as the sun in two lines of hydrogen. So whatever atmosphere there was on Mercury was extremely tenuous, and that's where it stood. Origin hypothesis. We were discussing something like this at dinner. Clayton worked extremely hard to generate this diagram, which is greatly simplified. Chapman and his co-worker in the early 1970s did computer simulations and found that Mercury could have been an escape satellite of Saturn. And they worked out two conceivable scenarios by which Mercury would either be taken from Venus and put beyond Venus, or the other one would put on the sunward side of Venus. The latter was made much more sense in terms of a hypothesis. And so, to our limited knowledge, this was the birth of the notion that Mercury was once part of the Venus system and was torn away, and after several thousand trips around the sun, settled pretty much into his current orbit, which is highly elliptical, fine, but it's a stable orbit. And when we were doing the research for this, we are not planetary scientists. We were frankly a little amazed that such a thing had ever been considered, but apparently, with some more searching, found that this was not such a unique idea. In fact, I'm sure since the 1970s, it has been refined considerably. We do this. I keep dwelling on 1965. I can remember the announcement coming down from 1965 that Doppler radar observations had shown that Mercury was not tidally locked, that in fact Mercury had a 59.64-day rotation, which turns so much of the visual and photographic attempts of Mercury, mainly the former, into hash. Now, this is not the time to explain why so many skilled and diligent observers in so many locations got it so wrong, except to say that in 1954, one of the Fournier brothers, there were two of them who worked in the teens and the 20s. One of the Fournier brothers confessed to the great planetary astronomer Dolfeu that his work on Mercury had, to his satisfaction, we are going back to the 19 teens, damaged any notion that Mercury was tidally locked. But the problem was with the Fournier brothers is that they were swimming against the tide of science of the day. They were, I don't want to say they were overwhelmed by hostility, but they were perhaps reluctant to contradict the greats, which is what they would have had to do. But the Fournier brothers never did buy a tidally locked Mercury. They may not have known what it was, but they did not think that Mercury was tidally locked. And in 1965, it took Doppler radar observations to get that information, to solidify that fact, when for 250 years everybody had been fumbling. Yes. Yes, it was. What was that? I don't know how big, 1,000 feet across? Something like that? No. Is that meters? Okay. 500 feet across. All right, thank you. Thank you. Well, times being what they are, we have to deal with the possibility of life. I call it the L word because it seems to me in the politics of space exploration, either by remote sensing or by sending probes there, one always has to slip in somewhere in the press statements, in the interviews, and we always have to consider the possibility of life, that what we are doing. Now, there are few noble scientific enterprises than the search for life in the universe. I am not making, but on the other hand, it strikes me that that this is a lot of PR also in order to interest the public, which justifiably has in life elsewhere in the universe.
Okay, I know, but the presentation is going.
I see. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. All right. In the establishment or the proposal that Mercury might have had life on it, I mean, we're talking about perception, not in fact evolution on Mercury. There is a deduction, process of deduction from the Earth, which is an n of 1. In other words, if life is here, then life can exist on Mercury. And I'm going back to 17th, 18th, 19th century astronomy. It's here, so it's got to be there too. And to be fair, that if the Almighty can put life on Earth, why should not the Almighty put life on the other planets? Just making provision for the kind of creatures or kind of people who live there. Because life adapts on Earth, so why would not life adapt on a place like Mercury? In the age of discovery, the great flowering of discovery of the 16th and 15th centuries, the Europeans mainly are finding exotica all over the world. So why shouldn't there be exotica on the other planets? And the Encyclopedia Britannica, first edition, published 1771, pointed out that the Almighty logically would have made provision on Mercury. There's a big section in the Encyclopedia Britannica on astronomy. The Almighty would have provided for the people of Mercury the way he has provided for Homo sapiens on Earth. And the question is Mercury too hot? Well, yes, it's very hot. But again, without using a word like evolution or a genetic adaptation, that life beginning at a great distant time in the past would have adapted to the conditions so close to the sun. And the other planets in the solar system undoubtedly had life on them because it was only logical. We all know there's life on Mars, and Venus is an early stage planet with clouds and some sort of great Paleozoic swamp. And so there would have been life on Mercury too. And the reason we cannot see the life of the living areas on Mercury is because it's so difficult to observe the planet. So the newspaper article that Dale Parton provided did address this question of life closer to the sun and said there is no reason, given all the clouds to protect the surface of Mercury, there is no reason why there shouldn't be life and possibly even people there. And so are the planets inhabited? The question is absolutely yes. until it became no. All right. Clayton and I could not stop ourselves. We have to give an honorable mention to that magnificent machine. As I was saying to Mike O'Dowd here, this is Mariner 10. It made 3 close flybys of Venus from 1974 to 1975. And NASA flew this bird only 12 years after the first successful interplanetary probe, which was Mariner 2. It was a Venus probe. Very humble by comparison. And this machine, this amazing automaton, sent us back hundreds of pictures over 3 flybys. The third one was the closest of the 3. And as my sometimes friend Kevin Bullerman says, an engineer sort, there are some of those in the audience, I think. We can build anything anywhere. To do that 12 years after Mariner 2, sending back all kinds of information, is a triumph of our ingenuity and our focus as a people and as a species. And so, as Kevin would say, and I'm sure Clayton would agree, what's keeping us from the stars? Thank you. This little flashlight is dying, whoever gave it.
All righty. So let's light it up here.
Here's the flashlight. Thank you.
Testing, Mike. Testing. Testing. Testing, testing.
Temperature measurements, lack of atmosphere, and the increasing knowledge of solar physics, that Mercury is being beaten to death by quantum radiation from the sun, by these coronal mass ejections, as is the technique, and put a whole guy for hundreds of millions of years, that planet becomes sterilized. Now,
Can you repeat what he's saying?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Somebody has
The
to.
question is asked whether Mariner put to rest the question of life on Mercury, and I would
Vigorously disagree, because Mercury has taken quite a beating over the last couple of billion years. Now, there are some comets with organic molecules that are probably hit Mercury quite often because he is close to the sun, and the perihelia of comets can be quite close to the sun. If there's anything of these ices remaining, it is in very deep craters at the poles. And I have bet the farm that any of the organics made it through coronal mass ejections. So go ahead, put it here. Well, all right. Yeah.
This gene is giving us because
Messenger. Oh, which probe has done the best job in observing Mercury because of the difficulties that the Earth-based astronomers had? That would be Messenger. When did Messenger go? 2014? No, it was longer ago. Messenger picked up where Mariner 10 left off, Messenger got pretty much the whole surface of Mercury and a battery of experiments that Steve Whitty described in a McCall meeting. It had to be. Anybody know when Messenger went, arrived? Anybody, please? No? Just a moment. Just a moment. 2000. Yeah. Well, I remember that Steve Whitty gave an excellent talk on the messenger findings. And I'm sure he took basically only a couple of narrow spectral lines of the information because he too is not a planetary scientist, did a fair amount of work. And what Messenger was able to do is, you know, I come from a time when you're damn lucky to get the thing out of Earth's atmosphere, to say nothing of spending months or even years taking data. That's why I wax almost poetical for these things. That in the good old days, like the first moon probe ever, 1958, we heard it on the car radio. The Thor blew up 77 seconds after launch. Now, this was the days.
Messenger was up for 27 for 11 years.
So in many of these artists' conceptions, before it was known to be rotating, the similarity that I saw in a lot of them was some sort of circular-ish feature in the lower right.
Yes.
No such thing exists. Yes, no.
All right. The question was that there is this large southern feature, roughly circular, that seems to be persistent. Do I have that right? Yeah. Okay. Well, dang divine. Because one's confidence in this multiplicity of drawings, it's shaken. It's shaken. And the slide we did not show will address philosophy of science and the philosophy of investigation generally. That there seem to be well-meaning biases thrown into this. And I will not say, and it would be unfair to say wishful thinking. No. Wishful thinking is not the same thing to my mind as bias. And I'm not a psychologist. Wishful thinking is fantasy generation, your own conception. But if you are having to rest or try to confirm the work of others, and especially given bad operational conditions, I'm not going to say that circular feature you're referring to is the Caloris Basin, because I do not think it is. I think the latitude is wrong. But how many reviewers of the many drawings through the years have just thrown up their hands and said, I can make nothing of this. Yeah, Jim?
You didn't seem to mention anything about the perturbation of Mercury's relationship to Einstein's theory.
We did not address the movement of the major axis of Mercury's orbit in relation to the theory of relativity. We do not believe in the theory of relativity. Yeah, and we just, we just want to look at telescopes, simple pleasures for simple math. That would require real scholarship. We don't do scholarship. We just kind of, mess it up. It was basically, Jim, it was off the subject. Basically. That's a whole different animal. And we found references in the early literature to, especially Berry, 1898, did sort of tickle that a little bit, that the behavior of the orbit of Mercury is not well understood, and the deviations, if I remember correctly, are too great to be accounted for by observer error through how many Berry's writing in the end of the 19th century, let us say for the previous 200 years, actually less. There is a discrepancy there that is one of many with Mercury that presently defies explanation. And I can see why at the close of the 19th century, they see this anomaly and they say, no, no, no. Our positional astronomy is too good at the close of this enlightened century to blame it on such errors. But something's going on that somebody I don't know about. And eventually they did. But it was off the subject. We're trying to show here the difficulties in coming to grips with a planet that is so near and, quote, Earth-like, sort of, and yet presents so many astronomers, at least until 1965. Yeah, at least till 1965. That's when the roof fell in. And as Chapman said in one of his papers, now we're not reading the original scientific literature, Chapman said, this is Chapman, who made the beautiful Mercator map. He said, this does not negate the value of all the work that has gone before on the surface of Mercury, and it's what is to be seen. It does not, because the observations were good, but the problem is that Mercury in its various positions it's a crescent, it's a half, and a lot of observers were looking at the same surface, but they thought it was turning at a different pace because they couldn't make head or tail about what they were seeing, or at least were under some severe handicaps. And here we come into the 1960s, tremendous telescopes and photographic techniques. It could be maybe applied to any science that uses remote sensing. Meteorology. What are the modeling tools for the meteorology of the 1950s in terms of computer simulations? We can see the weather all around us, but predicting it is something else. And in observing Mercury, we have an analog problem. Hell, if you can find disputes in taxonomy amongst field botanists, is it a species? Is it a subspecies? Is it a varietas? Is it something completely different in another phylum? I mean, I'm not saying that they do get out, but these questions exist even in things you can touch and measure. Why, you really got to start on that one. Yes.
In the chat, are there any plans to land a probe on Mercury?
Whoever it was, you should be eligible for canonization. Because I've been crabbing about that for a long time. And to the best of my knowledge, information, or belief, which isn't very great, I wish some real hot spur of space program was here. There is nothing. I'm sure that there are NASA contractors out there or bright graduate students in some space aerospace programs that have come up with proposals for Mercury landers. But I've been saying for a long time, when you're going to be boring,
on you here. I keep telling them, but they don't listen. So I don't keep telling them, and so there's nothing to listen to. We've really got to do that. There's some fascinating things that can be found in ground-based Mercury exploration from with petrographic microscopes, and I raise this as a non-physicist, Jim. Might there be some strange species of minerals to be found on Mercury because of the relativistic, well, what's it called? Okay, what the sink? Might there be some strange mineralogy? I don't know. But what we got to do is get some petrographic microscopes there. We got to take borings. We have to have landscape and IR. It's best to land in the early night in 3, 4, 5 wavelengths to watch how the landscape responds to the fall of night and do a little remote sensing geology. Making a landing on Mercury is, to me, more important than going back to Pluto. It's our neighbor. It's a terrestrial planet, but it's Mercury, hold on, right? I mean, no sex. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, everyone. Our next meeting is at Macomb Community College, Thursday, the 16th at 7 p.m. Our next open house and star party is Saturday, November 25th. And we're meeting afterwards. Some of us will meet afterwards at the Red Coat Tavern, Woodward, north of 13 miles. So good night and cool skies, everyone. Good.